Welcome back to Kings of the North. Doug Lesmerises with you. Bill Landis will be along shortly. Tyler Shoemaker is going to be along shortly. Big show, lots of stuff going on. The biggest thing that we're going to do on this show is run through all 28 of our Northern teams, recite them to yourself, recite them to your friends. You guys know them by now, right? We're going to run through all 28 Northern teams and look at their quarterback situations for 2025. Who has a projected returning starting quarterback? Like half the teams do. Who has a backup in the pipeline, like a young guy on the roster that you think, I think that guy's going to start next year. And who almost certainly needs to go into the portal. Bill and I are going to run through that. That is the thrust of the show. We're going to cover a couple other news and notes. And we also have an exciting announcement. We'll have Army-Navy picks. That's the one game this week. Bill and I will pick that. And we have an exciting announcement about our bowl, pool, and playoff bracket game that we're going to do with you guys. TShoe from the Bets of the North Friday betting show is going to help me announce that here in just a little bit. No Friday betting show this week as a separate. We're going to just put in a little hit with TShoe here during the show. But we want to start off with some news. Rich Rodriguez is official. I like it. Rich Rodriguez returning to be the coach at West Virginia. When Neil Brown was fired, when Ryan Walters was fired at Purdue, Bill and I gave our lists of who we liked the best. No inside information, just, viewing it as people who shout into college football microphones for a living. The number one name on Bill's list for West Virginia was Barry Odom, who was hired by Purdue. The number one name on my list for West Virginia was Rich Rodriguez, who has been hired by West Virginia. And this is happening at the same time as the Bill Belichick hire, which also is official. Bill and I did talk about that on Wednesday, so we don't have to go into that in great detail here. I just want to reiterate again why I think those two hires are different. And we talked about this on the show 9 days ago in discussing the types of hires you can make. Bill Belichick, to me, is the big-time hire, but he just wants a job. He's done everything that he can do in football already. He's arguably the greatest NFL coach of all time. And now he just wants a job. So I think you have a chance when you hire a head coach. There are two ways that I think you can get the most out of that head coach. One is if this coach is filled with the fire to succeed. It's probably personal. He wants to win national championships. He wants to make a lot of money. He wants to succeed and have a great reputation and put his name in the history books. But you get that at your program because he wants it for himself. And of course, he'll say he wants it for the players and the fans and everything. But really, he is driven within to succeed with a burning fire. And honestly, it's like motivation. I don't know. Like you care about the results. So that's one way. Burning internal personal fire. The other is you really care about this place. And there is something personal about this for you. And there is a personal connection. Maybe you grew up in the state. Maybe it's your alma mater. Maybe it's the team you rooted for as a kid. Maybe it's just a program that you admire. Maybe something happens that you really click with the fan base, but then it becomes personal. And you do really want to win for them. So I don't know how Bill Belichick checks either of those boxes. I don't know that he gives two hoots about North Carolina, which is fine, but he's also accomplished everything he can accomplish. Why is he doing this? Like he's going to be filled in his 70s with a burning fire to succeed when his hand is weighed down with Super Bowl rings? I don't get it. Rich Rodriguez has already kind of worked his way up the coaching ladder and now is back at West Virginia, but he has a connection there. He grew up in West Virginia. He played at West Virginia as a defensive back for 4 years. He was a staffer there for a year, an assistant there for a year, and a head coach there for 7 years. He has coached at West Virginia for 13 of his 61 years. 21% of his life has been as a coach at West Virginia. But he also grew up there, and he also coached at other colleges in West Virginia for 10 years. He's lived 41 of his 61 years in that state. So I don't know what his burning fire to succeed is personally right now at this point in his career, but I don't think there's any doubt that we can question that he cares about West Virginia, and I want that. I don't think you have to. Burning fire to succeed personally is not necessary. Is not age related. But like Curt Cignetti is an older coach, but he has a burning fire to succeed because he just got this chance at this level with Indiana. Fran Brown has a burning fire to succeed. It is a Northeast job. He is from Jersey at Syracuse, but he wants to show how good he is. He's never had this shot before. So it's not necessarily age related, but I think it's like you have some experience and now you get this chance. In this business, you make projections of whether you think something is going to work or not, and then people say, you were wrong. I mean, it's no fun to just say, time will tell. I always make fun of time will tell because literally the passing of time is how everything happens in the world. The present becomes the past. The future becomes the present. So when people say time will tell, it's like, no, duh. That's existence. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And then tomorrow becomes today, and now you know what happened. So time will tell is the stupidest thing that anybody can say. Go look up how often it appears in the sports stories you read. Probably in 40% of sports stories, it says time will tell. Time will pass. Tomorrow will become today. That is not analysis. So you want to know what we think. I think Rich Rod's going to work at West Virginia. I don't think Bill Belichick's going to work at North Carolina. And it's because of these two things, why they're different. I'm not locked. I mean, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But that's my guess right now today. Okay. Good luck to Rich Rod. And we don't care about North Carolina. But the North Carolina, Bill Belichick plays one Northern game next year at Syracuse. Fran Brown, Bill Belichick. Who doesn't want to see that? I want to see it. This show is going to focus on quarterbacks in the transfer portal. We did pre-record the segment with me and Landis. A couple things have changed. So when you hear this in the show, I just want to advise you, Devin Dampier is officially at Utah now. New Mexico quarterback Jason Beck becomes the offensive coordinator at Utah after being the offensive coordinator at New Mexico. Landis was on this from the jump. A lot of people were. This makes sense. It's official. Devin Dampier is going to be the transfer portal quarterback for Utah in 2025. We talk about that as a could be. It is a sure thing now. He's going there. We talk about Minnesota. Could they be interested in the portal? They do have a young guy on the roster, but Zach Pyron from Georgia Tech, who in 3 years at Georgia Tech, played 19 games and started 3 games, including at Notre Dame this year. He is committed to Minnesota. It feels like a plan B for Minnesota if they need it. He also maybe could be a little bit of a wildcat quarterback. They are not bringing him in to be the sure thing starter, but we theorize, could they be intrigued? They've done something. I think it's a smart move. He was 20 of 36 for 269 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, 9 carries for 45 yards against Notre Dame this year, what he did at the start for Georgia Tech. So he's played. He's a good plan B. Get him in the room. Connor Wegman, former Texas A&M quarterback in the portal. We theorized him for a couple Northern teams. He's committed to Houston. Off the board, not coming north. Darian Mensah, just mentioned as a guy, good year at Tulane, theorized. He's committed to Duke, off the board. And the last one, this didn't come up during the show really, but Thomas Castellanos, our guy, good year at Boston College last year, kind of a weird year as the starter for much of the year at BC, got benched, left the team, went in the portal, has officially committed to Florida State. It feels like they think he's going to be the starter next year. He had committed to out of high school and played for Gus Malzahn at Central Florida when Malzahn was the head coach there. Malzahn now left UCF to go be the OC at Florida State. So he and Thomas Castellanos have a relationship. That Thomas Castellanos winds up there is not a shock, but the idea that the guy who lost his job at Boston College would now become Florida State's quarterback is interesting. And by the way, Thomas Castellanos of Boston College beat Florida State this year because everybody beat Florida State this year. Okay, let's get to our exciting bowl pool announcement and kind of covering the bases with TShoe, wrapping up our real money betting season. Let's bring in Tyler Shoemaker on Kings of the North. All right, Tyler Shoemaker is here. And TShoe, I think I came up with the name finally. I thought this was more like an old-timey or whatever, but we got some comments about the hat. And I think my name when I wear this is Heisenbet.
I like it. Yeah, I know when people started tweeting that at us, I was like, oh, yeah, I should have caught that in real time when you put it on last week.
Yeah. So I'm putting it on to announce that we lost more last week. But we're not going to start with that. We're going to start with exciting news, which is we are having a Kings of the North playoff bracket and bowl pool contest. We have locked it down. The site is live at poolpartygaming.com. If you go to that website, poolpartygaming.com, you will see our logo on the homepage. Click on it and join there. It's free to sign up. You have to put in your email. And these guys are going to give updates a little bit during the course of bowl season. They might email you with who's leading and that kind of thing. And what we're going to do two things simultaneously, TShoe. One is a playoff bracket that you have to have in by the kickoff of the first game on Friday night, December 20th, just like you would with an NCAA pool. You got to pick everything beforehand. And then we're also going to have a bowl pool with only Northern games. We're going to have 20 Northern bowls. And for those Northern bowls, you're going to pick the game against the spread, and you're going to pick an over-under. You're going to pick the total, and it'll be very easy. You'll just see on the website, it's going to look like a betting app. You just click on it to pick it. Those bowl picks you only have to make before kickoff of the bowl, of the individual bowl. You don't have to do those all at once. But the thing about that TShoe that these guys really do that's cool, Adam and Eric, is that those are live lines. So when you make your bet, you lock it in at that line and that total, and it might shift. And then different people will have the same games with different lines, just like on a real betting app. So I've never been in a pool like that, but that sounds pretty cool to me, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. That's like actual betting. I've never heard of that either on these sites. Usually it's just like a static. They kind of generally something close to the opener is what you generally get. And then everyone's playing with the same line. But I kind of like that because it forces you to pay closer attention, because if you're just like, oh, whatever, I'll do it when I do it, you might have missed a number by 3 points, and that puts you at a huge disadvantage, and vice versa. So I like that. I think that's really cool. I'm excited to be a part of both of them.
Yeah. So I'll be making picks. You'll be making picks.
Yep.
Bill will be making picks. Producer Mike will be making picks, and it's open. There's no password or anything. Tell your friends to jump in. We do plan to have prizes. I don't have all of that sorted at the moment because I'm a last minute doofus, and I can't even believe this came together because these guys I've been talking with them, and I was like, yeah, I guess let's do it. And then they did it in a couple days, and it's a miracle. They're so good at it. So it's just good. It's for fun. It's for community. It's for the North. If there's a bowl game that's between two Southern teams, we're doing what we should properly do, TShoe, which is we're ignoring it.
I like it. I thought you were going to say they just are going to put a banner up over that game on the site that says "Cram it," but I understand we're on a time crunch. They couldn't make that happen that quick.
Actually, they probably could do that. So yeah, void the Cram it game.
Cram it bowl.
Yes, or void. So we'll have 20 bowls that are all of our Northern teams, plus everybody in the North, like MAC teams. If there's a MAC team in a game, we're including that. We're not doing this first Saturday game. So the first bowl that you have to have your bet in for is next Tuesday, Memphis and West Virginia. So, and if you miss a bowl, you just won't win points for that, but you can still get in. And as long as you have this, just get in and have fun and join our KOTN community. So spread the word, tell your friends. We'd love to have a gazillion people in this. Poolpartygaming.com. All it requires is your email so that you can get the updates and everything. And then otherwise, bowls and bracket. And we'll be talking about it on the show. And it's part of what we want to do here. We are not betting real money on this TShoe because we are locking it in. We made money this year. We made money. That's the headline of what you and I have been doing for 15 weeks on Bets of the North is we came out ahead. That's what matters.
I mean, that's the bottom line. And we obviously had a great time doing it. But I mean, how many betting shows do you think exist in the YouTube space or on Spotify or whatever? There's a million. I bet 90+% of those are not profitable. So for us to go an entire season and have made people money and made money, for our charity, I mean, that's as good as it gets. Like, I would sign up for that 10 times out of 10.
Feedingamerica.org is where we are going to send this money. We started with a $5,000 bankroll. We said that we are giving them at least $5,000. And if we win, we're giving them more. And as it turns out, we are giving them $5,049.07. And I'll tell you what. Our owner is tremendously generous to put up this money for us to do this. I'm going to round it up. I'm going to round it up to $5,050. I'll take the last 93 cents. That's on me for the kids, right? That's how Heisenbet does it. The boss, he takes the first 5,000. I take the last 93 cents. So we're going to give them $5,050. And TShoe, we're giving them that money going out with two final losers last week where we each picked a $100 game and got smoked. I got smoked on. I was like, Iowa State, they should be favored. I'm taking plus points blown off the field by Arizona State. I took them at +2. They lost by 1 million. And then Louisiana Marshall, we were like, I don't know, like vibes, math kind of going against Marshall, and Charles Huff and Marshall went out on top, 5.5 point underdogs. I think that was that 31-3. Yeah. Marshall beat Louisiana. So that's why we're locking it down. We want to make sure we don't dip under the $5,000 mark.
Yeah. 2 points to make about those bets. One, the Iowa State bet from a process standpoint was correct. That, because you bet it at what, +2.5? They closed -1.5. Yeah. So, 3 points of CLV for what that's worth long term, that, projects to be a winner. And then Louisiana, I mean, I had the wrong read apparently, but also it didn't help that they were already on their backup quarterback and he got hurt early in the game. So they played most of the game with their third string quarterback. And it was a loser basically from the jump. So happy though. Like I said, my dad's had season Marshall tickets forever. So I'm happy for Thundering Herd Nation, but not so happy for my $100 bet. I'm also not happy that I cashed the other two plays that I gave out that weren't for $100. So I went 2-1 last week, but the one, real money play that I gave out lost, unfortunately.
Yeah, I lost my other best bet on the MAC championship game, again, blown off the field. I completely had that wrong. I've got to stop doing this. But you really had a good vibe on. You took the two overs in the ACC championship game and the Big Ten championship game, and those cashed easily. Yep. So that put you back up on the best bets for the year. We both finished ahead. You are now, I included the $100 best bets in our best bets since I didn't really have somewhere else to put them exactly. I didn't know where to put them. So anyway, 26 and 25 on the year for you, 23 and 21 on the year for me. You went out much hotter than I did. And as we said, we wound up down a little bit on the $500 plays because we went 7-7. So we lost a little bit of juice, but we wound up on the plus money swings, which is why we came out $49 ahead. But we had a good time, and we'll come back and we'll probably do something before the playoff games next week, TShoe, to talk a little bit more specifically about some bowls once we maybe have a better handle on some opt-outs. But also, people aren't opting out of the playoff. So the playoff is the best chance to get a read on things and make bets like we do during the regular season. It is a little dangerous in bowl season when you don't know who's playing to try to bet on this, right? But will you feel like, your numbers will work, right? You don't have to account for other things. When it comes to the playoff games, do you feel like you'll be able to get a pretty good read on them?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you talk about like this bowl coming up, this Western Michigan and South Alabama game. I looked at the sheet that's got all the opt-outs and everything, and it's like, okay, well, like 80 players in this game aren't playing. So like, how do you even... So we're not really going to do too much with those type of games, but definitely the playoff, definitely some of the higher leverage games where there's fewer opt-outs, fewer coaching changes, that sort of thing. So we will have some more bowl action for you, but we will definitely focus specifically on the playoff because I think that's, the coaches are going to be there. The players are going to show up motivated. Yep. So that's more, quote unquote, real football as far as being predictive. So I'm looking forward to the playoffs. Going to be awesome.
Yeah, I think it's going to be great. It's going to be fun for everybody to join us at poolpartygaming.com to make these bets. But you do have a couple little suggestions. We're calling them suggestions, just two bowl things you're thinking about for early bowls if people want a scooch bit of advice, right?
Yeah, and like I mentioned before, bowl season is kind of the opposite of the regular season in terms of like your betting strategy, because I generally try to bet bowls as close to kickoff as I can, so you have all of the information of like who's playing, who's not. But a couple that jumped out to me as I looked at this early opt-out sheet and, the coaching changes and all that. Memphis only laying 4 points against West Virginia. I project that -7.5. And then when you look at the off-field stuff, Neil Brown got fired from West Virginia, so they're in a coaching transition. They also had some opt-outs, I think specifically on defense. So, the off-field stuff kind of favors Memphis. The number favored Memphis. I'm probably going to have a little bit on there. My bowl season bets are probably going to be like a half unit. So, don't bet the mortgage on it. But I do like Memphis in that game, anything under a touchdown. And then another one
that you sent that at -4. When I was looking, I found it at 3.5. I found it at 4.5. So there's like, if you're saying anything under 7, you would take it up to. There's a lot of opportunity here with Memphis then.
Yeah, I mean, and we see in bowl games all the time, like, I think if you like the favorite, like definitely just lay the points, because a lot of times bowl games go blowout one way or the other. And if you like underdogs, unless it's like a 15-point dog, like anything a touchdown or less, I would just take the underdog on the money line for your bowl season bets, because if that's the team that shows up and the other team comes out flat, like they're going to win the game. Very seldom do you see a favorite win but not cover. So, just something to think about as you strategize your bowl bets. But I do like UNLV is another one. I project them -5. They did lose their head coach, but Cal's starting quarterback is out. So in my mind, being without the starting quarterback that played all year is more impactful than losing your head coach. They hired Dan Mullen to come in there. So, I think that's kind of a showcase for those UNLV guys, knowing like your head coach is probably going to be there on the sidelines watching you for next year. So number likes it. I think the off-field stuff more favors UNLV than Cal, or if you want to call it a wash. I think UNLV is going to win the game. They're 1.5 point underdogs. I would play this on the money line at +105.
Okay. So that, and just Memphis, West Virginia is next Tuesday, the 17th, and UNLV Cal is Wednesday, the 18th. So this is why TShoe's giving out these suggestions right now. Our plan is to be back with another full-throated Bets of the North show next week. There will not be one this week. We're doing this TShoe hit instead, so no Friday this week. But of course, TShoe, we had to see you. So good to see you, and thanks for winning season, brother.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. Hopefully, we've already started brainstorming our plans for potentially next year, so hopefully we can run it back. I know I get the vibe that people really enjoyed the show. I read the YouTube comments and you see people like, I don't even bet, but I love this show. So we really appreciate that. And hopefully, we'll be back next year, but we still got about another month of football to bet on. Yep. So we'll be back.
All right. He's Tyler Shoemaker from Bets of the North. You can also find his work at VSiN. And also, if you want to follow him on Twitter at TShoe Index on the social medias, he's given out information and you can get his plays and stuff if you follow him there. So TShoe, thanks as always for joining us here on Kings of the North.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I just listened to myself. My voice sounds ridiculous. I really have to get healthy. What am I doing? Doug, figure it out. Poolpartygaming.com. Go there. They just put up an explainer of how to do the bracket, how to do the bowl pool bets. It's going to be fun. We'll keep talking about it during the show. We're going to get our prizes figured out, and we're just super excited to be able to have this for our Northern community. And thanks to TShoe for a great year. Thanks to TShoe for a tremendous year. We're going to have him back on again. We'll be back next week. Next Friday, I think, with like a full Bets of the North. Just as a reminder, no Friday Bets of the North this week, no Saturday show. And so we'll see you after this show. We'll see you on Monday. And the plan on Monday is for Landis and I in 12 different categories to rank the 12 playoff teams, 1 through 12, and come up with a final metric of sort of like, okay, by our things that matter, some objective stats, some subjective. Who do you think the best coaches, the best defensive playmakers, those kind of things? Who do we think the best teams in the bracket are? So we'll do that on Monday. Next Tuesday, we will focus on Indiana, Notre Dame, and a breakdown there. Next Wednesday, we will focus on Ohio State, Tennessee, and a breakdown there. Next Thursday, we will focus on Penn State, SMU, and a full breakdown there. And we'll work in Clemson, Texas, somewhere along the line. But for now, quick break. When we come back, Army-Navy picks from me and Bill, and then Landis and I will break down the quarterback situations for 2025 for all 28 Northern teams on KOTN. So let's make one pick this week, Bill, because we were so good last week. We nailed it. I made horrible picks on the betting show, and we were each 3-5 last week in championship week. We didn't pick the one game, but like we were totally wrong on Miami against Ohio in the MAC. We sucked. What happened to us?
We sucked. Yeah. I don't know. I wasn't very good all year, so.
Now, don't be like that. Don't be like that. We were both wrong on Miami. We were both wrong on Louisiana versus Marshall. Marshall destroyed them. We were both wrong on Iowa State. They got boat raced by Arizona State. So it was just a bad week. So we were both 3-5 for the year. I'm now 226-68. You are 215-79. And we will make our one pick here for Army Navy, the only game of the weekend. And we are absolutely, there's no doubt that we claim Army Navy. A game between a team in Maryland and a team in New York. They are America's teams, but they're also the North teams, right? So so everybody don't question us on this. We own, these guys are part of us.
That's right. And they play what I would consider a Northern brand of ball.
There we go.
Yeah. Physical
there we
in
go.
Your face.
There we go.
Run it 80 times a game.
So they've both had excellent seasons. Army just beat Tulane, which you picked and I got wrong. But this is American Athletic Conference champions Army. And this has never happened before because Army is in a conference for the first time. But like to have one of these teams coming off a conference championship game, they usually just always have 2 weeks off before Army Navy. So Army just played and won, but they also didn't get the week off. Did that factor into your consideration here at all? It's just the world's changing a little bit.
No, it didn't. No, these guys they're gonna be ready to play.
You think?
Not
Army game. And Navy, they'll be ready to knock heads. They're not gonna be like.
There's no hangover. There's no hangover.
We're tired.
Yeah.
We protect our nation, but we played a football game and it made us tired.
It's like, well, the Navy got an extra week to prepare for Army. It's like they've been preparing for Army for 150 years.
Yeah.
It hasn't changed.
Army's 11-1. Navy is 8-3. They both were ranked. They both lost to Notre Dame this year. They both were ranked at the time they played Notre Dame. Just the one thing I want to say about Navy is Navy was looking great. They were undefeated. They played Notre Dame. They turned it over 6 times, totally uncharacteristic. They got blown out in that game. And then they lost to Rice the next week, which I am willing to attribute to a hangover. And then their quarterback got hurt.
Yes.
And so their quarterback got hurt against Tulane, Blake Horvath, right? Am I saying that right?
Correct.
Blake Horvath got hurt against Tulane, and they had to put in 2 backup quarterbacks, and they got shut out. And then those backup quarterbacks kind of got their stuff together, especially Braxton Woodson last time out against East Carolina, and they really looked good in the second half. But also, Blake Horvath is back and is healthy for this Army game. So, Army only lost once, but I'm kind of thinking of Navy as only having lost once because I think they were sad about the way they played Notre Dame and had a hangover loss, and then they had our quarterback got hurt loss. So I just don't want people to underestimate Navy, which is why I picked Navy. So I'm taking Navy 21-17, even though Army's about a touchdown favorite in this.
And that's like these games typically don't get out of hand. So I think picking it close is right. I'm glad that Blake Horvath is playing. Blake Horvath for Navy and Bryson Daly for Army have been, they do it differently, but I would say they've been 2 of the better quarterbacks in the country this year, just like with their consistency of play and doing what their team needs of them. So I'm very happy we get to see them both play in this game. I'm picking Army 20-13 because Army's run defense has been awesome this year. And Navy's has not been very good. Like Notre Dame ran it on Army and no one else did. And Tulane like runs the ball really well. Army held them to like 3 yards per carry in the American Championship game, which was played at night and was cold at Mikey Stadium. Like I understand that's a component of it, and Navy certainly won't be scared off by it perhaps being a little chillier for this game. But I just think Army's defense is pretty legit, so I'm picking Army 20-13.
Okay, so this game is on CBS at 3 p.m. on Saturday. It is in Landover, Maryland, is where they're playing. They move it around, kind of where they go places. But so the thing I'm really curious about is Braxton Woodson, I think, looked good enough in the second half against East Carolina that I'm wondering if they can work him into the game plan, even though Blake Horvath is healthy. And I wonder if that can be like a little wrinkle for Navy.
Maybe
that could be a little something here. So I just checked real quick on the betting lines. I think this is right. In 4 of the last 8 Army-Navy matchups, the underdog won. So it's a rivalry, and it's been there. Obviously was a time until Jeff Monken got there where Navy was just dominating this rivalry, and that has not been the case. Army, it swung back toward Army, but this is a super competitive game, and this should be one that Northern football fans should be interested. All right.
You think with the coaching carousel still moving a little bit, maybe Jeff Monken's last game?
Certainly. I mean, I think people believe that he has earned that right if he's interested in it, and that would be a worthy candidate for some of the jobs that are still open. So, yeah. I don't know which job that would be, but potentially. Yeah. All right. So we're split on Army Navy, which at least means it's good for us. It means one of us has to get it, right?
That's right.
So, So at least
I'm happy to support both the Army and the Navy. So.
Yeah. It'd be nice if it ended in a tie. Wouldn't that make everybody happy?
I'm sure they'd love that.
Yeah, I think they'd love that. Yeah. They would just stay until they turn the lights out. It'd be like midnight. It'd be like the 413th overtime, and they're like, we are not tying.
Yeah.
Army versus Navy, the one game this week. All right. Time to get into some QB talk. All right, Landis, we want to talk about portal quarterbacks because they matter so much. Can you believe how much they matter?
Yeah, I can believe how much they matter. Yes. It's become
crazy.
quarterback free agency every offseason.
I think it's kind of crazy to me how much they matter, because just for context here, before we get into what we think all 28 of our Northern teams, where they are with their quarterback situation. Do they have a guy in-house, or do they need to go get in the portal? This year, starting quarterbacks, and there are injuries and things that happen and stuff like that, but 13 of our 28 teams started the season and went most of the season with a quarterback they acquired in the portal last offseason. So the guy shows up on campus and he is the starting quarterback, almost half. Another 8 of our teams, Bill, had starting quarterbacks who had come in the portal previously. So that means there are only 7 of our 28 quarterbacks this year, our starting quarterbacks, who were recruited to their schools. Does that blow your mind at all?
Yeah, that's a little surprising. That's definitely surprising. I wonder what that is around the sport, but it's probably similar percentage if I had to guess. Yeah, I mean, it's surprising, but also, like, if you've watched the movement over the last couple of years, like, I guess it's not, because a lot of the young quarterbacks hop in the portal immediately too. It's not just the 4th and 5th year guys looking to finish their career someplace with a better opportunity. It's a lot of young players who have never played before, who I just think are a bit impatient. But then that creates situations where there are just so few teams around the country who end up with homegrown starting quarterbacks.
And there's more sort of just shuffling than I think there actually needs to be, because there's some stuff where a quarterback who seems pretty good leaves, and then the new team gets a quarterback who seems pretty good. And then the pretty good guy goes to his new place, and the pretty good guy comes to his place. And it's like, well, why did we even bother with this? Why couldn't you have just kept the guy who was there before? Just to rehash, the 7 homegrown starting quarterbacks for this season: Penn State, Drew Aller; Iowa State, Rocco Becht; West Virginia, Garrett Green; Kansas, Jalen Daniels; Kansas State, Avery Johnson; Nebraska, true freshman Dylan Raiola; and then Davis Ward and Alex Orji at Michigan. They also played Jack Tuttle, who had been a multi-time transfer, but they started with Davis Ward and Alex Orji. So those were the 7. The guys who were previous portal guys: Thomas Castellanos at Boston College, who had come from Central Florida previously; Billy Edwards, who had started his career at Wake Forest, starting quarterback at Maryland; Cade McNamara at Iowa had come from Michigan previously. Luke Altmaier at Illinois had come from Mississippi State previously. Or was he Ole Miss? I always get confused. Altmaier, Ole Miss, or Mississippi State?
Ole Miss. Yeah, Ole Miss.
I apologize on this Northern show for confusing my Mississippis. Hudson Card at Purdue had come from Texas. Shadur Sanders, kind of an interesting situation, but had come from Jackson State with his dad when he came to Colorado. Cam Rising at Utah has been at Utah a very long time, but started his career at Texas. And this doesn't quite apply, but Jake Retzloff was a junior college guy before he got to BYU. So he didn't start his career at BYU. And then, Bill, the 13 portal quarterbacks new to their teams this year and were the starting quarterbacks. Dylan Gabriel, Oregon; Kyle McCord, Syracuse; Riley Leonard, Notre Dame; Curtis Rourke, Indiana; Will Howard, Ohio State; Ethan Kaliak-Manis, Rutgers; Max Brosmer, Minnesota; Will Rogers, Washington; Brendan Sorsby, Cincinnati; Eli Holstein, Pitt; Aiden Childs, Michigan State; Tyler Van Dyke, Wisconsin, who unfortunately got hurt in week 3; and Mike Wright at Northwestern, who did get benched for a homegrown guy and Jack Lausch, but won the job in the preseason. Mm-hmm. And my final thing on this, on the context land, is I think 11 of those 13 new portal quarterbacks in the North were either, to me, like an A or a B, like very successful. I think either like in the moment or you feel really good about the future. The only two I think wouldn't qualify for that are Tyler Van Dyke at Wisconsin, who I would give an incomplete. Mm-hmm. It's nobody's fault. And Mike Wright at Northwestern, that didn't work. I think everybody else worked.
Yeah, they all kind of nailed it, right? To suit their needs for that particular year. I guess maybe we can't say that definitively about Ohio State yet, but I think, or perhaps even Notre Dame. Although I think like Riley Leonard getting Notre Dame to this point is a success. So,
what worked better, Riley Leonard or Sam Hartman? Portal quarterbacks back-to-back years.
Riley Leonard.
Okay, so I mean, like, and I'm not trying to be like just to double check that, right?
Yeah.
I don't, and it doesn't have to be a home run, but there are occasionally portal guys who are like disasters. Oh, yeah. Like getting the wrong guy in the portal torpedoes your season, and you cannot recover from it. I think that happened a little bit for Nebraska in year 1 of Matt Rule with Jeff Sims, right? Like I think that we see examples of like when it really doesn't work, and I just don't think Mike Wright Northwestern didn't work, but like other than that. I think 11 and a half or 13 is pretty darn good. So now as we have this conversation, there's a pretty good chance that if your team's going to get a guy in the portal, you should feel pretty good about it. Like, how do you think these Northern teams that we're going to get to, Bill, if you're a fan of a team that we're saying your quarterback is in the portal, should that make you nervous or should that make you excited?
I would say probably mostly excited. I am very much of the mind that you eventually need to stop doing that, right? So it depends. It's a case by case basis. If you're like in year 2 or 3 of a new head coach, maybe you're pretty excited about it. If you're in year 5 or 6 of a head coach and you're still on the carousel, then maybe you're less excited. But or merry-go-round, carousel, merry-go-round, they're the same thing, right?
They're the same thing. Yeah.
They're the same thing. Yeah, horses going in a circle. So I think mostly good, but it's not like an automatic good all the time.
Yeah. So I will say, as we go through this, at the moment, we just told you that 13 of the 28 Northern teams started a brand new portal quarterback in 2024. We only have 8 teams out of 28 in that category right now. We have 6 teams that we believe their most likely starting quarterback is a backup currently on the roster. And we have 14 that we believe the starting quarterback at least has a pretty good chance of returning, and it's just going to be the same starter who started most of this year. So, as successful as portal quarterbacks were in the North in 2024, we think there won't be quite as many needed in 2025. Is that just a blip? That's just the way it goes? Do you think maybe there are programs that are settling in a little bit more? Like, why? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's the way that it should be. Like, if you're a new coach, you get a transfer to jumpstart something. But ideally, I think you also recruited somebody behind that guy.
Yes.
Whether you got him out of high school or even a transfer, but he has multiple years of eligibility left, like you simultaneously kind of covered your butt for the present with a guy who knows what he's doing while developing your future at the same time.
There are a couple examples where, and we'll talk about it, where it's like there's schools that did exactly that. There's one that immediately leaps to mind for me.
Sure.
And then I'm going to sit on this show and praise them for getting a 1-year guy so they can develop their recruit. And then probably that recruit will go in the portal and they'll wind up with another guy. And it's like, okay,
Right.
but like you can see, I like when you can see the plans,
Yes.
right? As opposed to, are there some schools though? I think if you are a top tier national title contender, spinning the portal wheel every offseason is not the way to go at quarterback.
Yeah.
If you're a step short of that, are we sure that's not okay? That if you're trying to make a bowl, maybe win 8 or 9 games, maybe once every 7 years, really leap up into the playoff conversation, can't you spin the wheel?
I think if you're a program that is like that, if the tenor around your program allows you some grace for a potential step back or some inconsistency, then yes. If greatness is expected out of you year over year over year, I think no.
I do think part of it also is there are just some schools who are probably never going to get one of the 15 or 20 best quarterback recruits.
Yeah.
But very well could be landing spots for frustrated backups who previously were highly rated recruits or lower level guys who were never major recruits, but then played well at a smaller school and now would be rising up. I do think there are some schools, Bill, where actually as a plan, you will get better quarterback talent in the portal than you will out of high school.
Yeah. There are a lot of programs for whom that's true, I think. Although I don't know that you should like settle for that reality necessarily, but I do think there's truth to that.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go to our list. We will run through all of our 28 teams. We're going to start with the teams, Bill, that we believe are returning their starters and that there's not that much of a discussion. I had at least 2 on my list that are their starters could return, but I am not sure that they will. But I still put them on this list. Did you have so the way we did this, people, is we split it up. Yeah. We did 14 teams and we just came up with it on our own. But you had a couple of those too. Okay.
I did. Yeah.
Let's start with Nebraska and Dylan Raiola.
Yeah, this is maybe the most obvious one, although a couple of days ago it didn't feel that way. 24/7 Sports on Monday when the transfer portal opened had Dylan Raiola as the cover photo for their transfer portal tracker, and everyone was like, what's up? What's going on? And then they reported that Dylan Raiola might be interested in looking around a little bit to potentially find a team that is more ready to win right now than Nebraska is. And then Dylan Raiola went on Instagram, I think, and kind of squashed that. So yeah, I'm not anticipating that. It seems like he is their guy. And obviously if he's there, he's going to be their starter.
Yeah. Took some lumps this year. I think you hope by year 3 that Dylan Raiola can be a playoff quarterback for you. But this was going to be one of those of like, what? Or like, is this like, if this doesn't work, are you kidding me? Like, it's the responsibility of Nebraska to keep him there, but it also would stink for Nebraska. You know, like if they did their best and the guy was just like, I'm good, I'm going. And it's like, oh my God, that. I think we have to realize we live in this world. I think we also realize this world continues to change and we are probably going to get closer to contracts and less 1-year free agency for every player in the sport. But that would have been an example to me of like, this is not really how it should go.
I agree. Yeah. No, I agree. Definitely. It also would have been odd for Dylan Raiola. I honestly, like, I don't know what would have been the best look in the world for a kid who played at multiple high schools and was committed to Ohio State and Georgia and then Nebraska and like flirted with USC a little bit to then transfer after his first year. Like he's incredibly talented. He would have, the list of suitors would have been, 25, 30, 40 plus probably, but you don't want to create perceptions about yourself either by just kind of needlessly jumping into the portal.
So great. He's not going anywhere. Great for Nebraska. Dylan Raiola will be the starting quarterback in 2025. Iowa State. This news came out on Wednesday. Brett McMurphy reported that Rocco Becht was being pursued by other schools and is staying at Iowa State. And then also on Wednesday, Matt Campbell signed a gigantic extension at Iowa State. So Wednesday afternoon, after we finished the Wednesday show, was a very good afternoon for Iowa State. And this is one of these things, Landis, when I was going through this, I was like, all right, Rocco Becht back at Iowa State for sure. And if we had done that show and then on Friday, it was like Rocco Becht's going in the portal, I would have sucked. So this is one of those, again, where we are back to reporting that a very good player who cannot yet go to the draft is staying at his very good school, that's news is just where we are because everybody's a free agent.
Yeah, there's been a lot of player X has agreed to a new deal with the school that he was playing for, but like that. And for Rocco Beck, like he's a good young quarterback who I think is going to keep getting better. Right, he's only he'll be a junior next year. You're going to get 2 more years of Rocco Beck. So I definitely get why other teams were pursuing him, but it's awesome for Iowa State to keep him. I'm glad they did.
Iowa State will enter next year with one of the best 10 or 15 quarterback situations in the country. They did lose J.J. Cole, who was their pretty highly recruited backup. Mm-hmm. And that's just one of those where, well, when you have a young starter who's sticking around and you lose a backup that you really like, that's just normal. And so, but they'll
wonder
take
if the other in-state program might look at him.
Yeah, it could be interesting. Boston College, you have them on this side of the equation, Bill, of returning their starting quarterback.
I do. I think there's a little bit of a discussion here. So Grayson James took over for Thomas Castellanos toward the end of the season. Thomas Castellanos then transferred. Grayson James went 3-1 as the starter. Played pretty well, I think, for the majority of that time. Showed a little bit of dual threat capability. So I think Boston College is probably going to ride with him, would be my guess. Like, you don't see BC really linked with anything portal-wise. I think they might need to go into the portal for depth, but I don't know if they're going to go into the portal to bring in someone necessarily to compete with Grayson James. So my hunch is that he will be their returning starter next year after taking over the job over the back half of the season. But they are pretty late-handed otherwise. One of their signees last year, quarterback, they moved the receiver. They have a true freshman they signed in this most recent class, but they probably need another body or two there.
And this is one of those where Thomas Castellanos had been a transfer from UCF and Grayson James had been a transfer from Florida International. This might be one of those schools, especially with a quarterback guy like Bill O'Brien, where if they can kind of maybe continue to always be active in the portal, but not in a desperate way, where you are bringing in guys who could be multi-year. Like Grayson James is a perfect example here. Grayson James came to Boston College knowing that Thomas Castellano was probably going to be the guy. He had started games at Florida International, but was willing to come there and take a shot, and now here we are. And if you could find another Grayson James in the portal to come in and be the backup to Grayson James, then to get ready for the next thing, I think that'd be a really good plan for the Eagles.
I wouldn't hate that plan. And then they have Shaker Reisig in this 2025 recruiting class, who's a 3-star kid from Oklahoma, was like a pretty prolific passer in high school. So it's like, if you have Grayson James, maybe you get another veteran backup for Grayson James, but then in 2026, you're kind of ready to hand it over to Shaker Reisig. That's not a bad plan.
Love it. Michigan State. Aiden Childs came with Jonathan Smith from Oregon State, had some lumps as a second-year college football player and a first-year starter, had some peaks as well, is going to be back and be the guy. And this is the Once Upon a Time on a Predicting the Future show. This is the guy that Bill Landis said might be a Heisman finalist someday. So I grew a little like, oh man, like it's kind of, this is not, like he's growing, but there's maybe more speed bumps than I thought. But overall, that Aiden Childs is your returning starter and is your plan at Michigan State, at least for one more year and maybe two, sounds good.
Yeah, you have to ride with him. I think even if this first year as a full-time starter was a little up and down, as you said, but he's got a lot of talent. I wasn't on alert for whether or not Aiden Childs might look around or if Michigan State might look around. I was wondering if Michigan State might try to change the environment around Aiden Childs, which is to say, like, bring in a new coordinator or something. But yeah, I still think he can be much better. I don't. Will he be a Heisman candidate? I don't know. Maybe I was a little too hot with that one, but I think he can take some steps for sure.
You're allowed to be hot on this show, Landis. Don't apologize for being hot. Okay. Part of the environment certainly is changing for them because Montori Foster's going to the NFL draft. Jaron Glover is transferring. They're going to have Nick Marsh back at receiver, who is one of the better freshman receivers in the country. So Nate Carter, the running back, is going to the NFL draft. So like they're going to lose some of the pieces around him. And this would, I mean, you were talking about maybe are there any coaching changes or anything. Nick Marsh is a great start, but with some of the guys they're losing, they got to go in the portal and get some other people for him. Yeah. All right. Northwestern. We talked about Mike Wright as probably the transfer thing that worked out least effectively. But
Yeah.
then Jack Lausch took over as a homegrown guy, and you think he's the guy?
It's less about me thinking he's the guy and more about me wondering if Northwestern would be in any way attractive to a potential transfer quarterback. I just don't know that situation would be. So Jack Lausch won 3-7 as the starter. He started the final 10 games. He had 7 touchdowns. He had 8 picks. He had 2 rushing touchdowns. Like the very first game, I think it was like Eastern Illinois. The second half of that game was like, oh my God, this guy can really sling it. He can run. Like this looks like they have something here. And then it was never really quite the same after that. He has 2 more years of eligibility left. And I guess it's less of a conversation of like, can you build around Jack Lausch? Although I do think there's some traits there that maybe they could. They just signed a quarterback in this class, Marcus Romaine from Georgia, as a 3-star prospect. Last year, they flipped Ryan Bowe from North Dakota State, and he played against Illinois. Like for the first time this year, they put him in the game against Illinois, which I thought was interesting. So Northwestern's best path forward might just be, I think, to perhaps stand pat, kind of let everyone develop with Zach Lujan in that offense. And maybe it's Jack Lausch to start the season, and then maybe Ryan Bowe might pop at some point in the process, and that can be your guy for the future. So that's kind of my read on it. I just don't know. The last time Northwestern went into the portal, it got Mike Wright. Like, no offense to Mike Wright.
They were in there super late. They had Lausch and Brendan Sullivan battle in the spring. They didn't guarantee Sullivan anything. Sullivan went to Iowa, and then they were like the last people in the portal looking for whoever else was in there.
Yeah, so it wasn't a great situation, and I guess they would stand a better chance of getting someone better than that if they were to explore those opportunities out. Maybe they will. I just had not seen a whole lot of anyone tying a transfer quarterback to Northwestern at this point, so that's why I have them in this category.
And the teams that we're going to have in the you need a portal quarterback category are the teams like you don't have anybody. Like your starter is leaving, and it doesn't feel like you have a ready-made backup on the roster, so like you must go in the portal. If Northwestern could go in the portal, but the guy who started 10 games is back, it makes sense for them to be here. And I do think even Bo getting a little bit of action and then being around is also like a little bit reaffirms that Zach Lujan and David Braun are not sitting here in the second week of December with their head in their hands saying, oh my gosh, we have to get a guy. That's not where they are.
Right.
Rutgers, you love it. Polish rifle, good to go. Ethan Kalyak-Manis.
He's the Greek rifle. Ron Jaworski's the Polish rifle.
I got to hang out with Ron Jaworski. I covered some indoor league football in Philly and got to hang out with Jaws.
Oh,
so
nice.
You know where Jaws went to college?
Youngstown State.
Oh,
don't try to drop. I had a Ron Jaworski poster on my wall. Man, I was talking about that Landis. It was Dr. J, Steve Carlton, Mike Schmidt, but I do think I did have a Ron Jaworski. Anyway, look at Mike. Look at Mike with the... There's
just a subtle drop in.
If we started talking about Modern Family, and he'd be like, you know where Jay, the patriarch of the family, went to college? Youngstown State. So watch your Modern Family conversations.
Ed O'Neill did go to Youngstown State.
I know. What you think I don't know that Ed O'Neill went to Youngstown State? I'm not just throwing stuff out there.
Is that his name on Modern Family? I haven't watched Modern Family in 5 years. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, there you go.
He's Jay. See, I'm giving proper respect to the Penguins. Ethan Kalyak-Manis redshirted his first year at Minnesota, was there 2 years, transferred to Rutgers. So he has a 5th year coming, and he's going to come back and be the starting quarterback for Rutgers.
Love it. He has 1 year left or 2 years left?
I don't know. What's the COVID stuff anymore? He was in 2021, he did not play at Minnesota. And then 2022 and 2023, he was at Minnesota.
Okay, then he has 1 year left.
Yeah.
The COVID doesn't apply to guys that started their careers after 2020. Yeah.
He had 2 years where he played in games at Minnesota and 1 year of playing in games this year at Rutgers. So he has 1 year left. Cool. So you're all for it. This actually worked out.
I thought it was good.
The Gavin Wimsatt, the guy who Rutgers had, who was a pretty big time recruit, and then they brought in Nathan Kalyak-Manis, and we're kind of like, wow, what are they doing? And they had them battle it out, and I thought they should keep them both. And Greg Schiano was honest and told Gavin Wimsatt, you're not going to be the guy. And then he transferred to Kentucky. He's in the portal again. Wimsatt is, but Nathan Kalyak-Manis is just doing his thing.
Maybe Rutgers can bring back Gavin Wimsatt to play running back.
Oh, I kind of thought, I'd take a flyer on Gavin Wimsatt. It was maybe some kind of wrinkle QB at least. All right. Kansas and Kansas State, they're good to go. What a very stable state. Jalen Daniels has re-signed with his own team, which is how that was reported. He's sticking around, and Avery Johnson will be a third-year college football player and a second-year starter at Kansas State. And I'm sure, Landis, that you and I will be back here in August projecting Jalen Daniels and Avery Johnson as Heisman candidates, unable to help ourselves.
We are who we are. Yeah, that's definitely going to happen.
Yeah.
Just get it out of the way now.
Yeah. So Kansas and Kansas State, like, it's just not super interesting, but quite good. And Avery Johnson, of course. Jalen Daniels was more like, especially like the first half of the year didn't go well, and his offensive coordinator left. And it's like, I don't know. If he had decided to go somewhere, that wouldn't have been completely shocking. Like if Avery Johnson had decided to go somewhere, it would have been like a 5-alarm fire around the Wildcats. But
we should
both good to go.
We should rank all the states by their college quarterback play.
Oh, I thought we just rank states.
We can do that too.
But yeah,
what's number one for you?
I don't know, probably Florida, because that's where Mickey Mouse lives.
Fair.
I'm not sure about the rest of it. I don't know. Maybe can Disney World be its own state?
It practically is.
Yeah. So, all right. So those three are all Rutgers, Kansas, Kansas State. What about Pitt, Bill Landis?
How much time you got?
I know.
Like it should be Eli Holstein, right? Eli Holstein, transferred from Alabama, won the job, beat Nate Yarnell. Nate Yarnell is now transferring, so he's gone. You'd think it's just like, all right, here we go with Eli Holstein, and Pitt is reportedly hosting Virginia transfer Anthony Calandria for a visit.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that means for Eli Holstein. Now, it's not that Pitt's going to get Anthony Calandria. There are a lot of programs trying to get him. But the mere fact that Pitt is going after a starting caliber quarterback is a little puzzling to me. So I wasn't sure what category to put Pitt in, but with Eli Holstein on the roster and presumably coming back, I figured this category made the most sense.
It's very difficult to get a handle on. It is kind of difficult to get a handle on the Pitt season. Unfortunately, Eli Holstein, he's not the biggest guy in the world, and he actually is not that tall. I'm not that tiny. Nate Yarnell is super big. So when I went to Pitt camp, I was like, look at giant Nate Yarnell and look at little Eli Holstein. And Eli Holstein is 6'4", 225. It's just that Nate Yarnell is 6'7". So Eli Holstein is not little. Stop thinking that, Doug. But he puts himself in harm's way. He runs. Yes. He's rugged. He takes risks. He balls out. And he gets hurt. And unfortunately, I mean, he had a couple times this year, certainly, where he had hits to the head or his head hit the ground. Mm-hmm. So as a result, he left some games. He had 17 touchdowns and 7 picks. He had 13 big time throws and 21 turnover worthy plays, Landis. So
4th most in the country, turnover worthy plays.
Even when he was good, we were talking about him like, man, this guy takes some risks. It hasn't caught up with him. And then it started to catch up with him. Mm-hmm. So he's not so locked in. But especially in the beginning of the year, there were some flashes there that we were sort of thinking, we can't believe this guy's at Pitt.
Yeah.
As a guy who was a big time recruit at Alabama, left when Saban retired as a 1-year guy and landed at Pitt, it felt like this is awesome for them. And then just like the second half of the year didn't go as well. So I'm not sure what to think, which is what you already said. But listen to this. His first 5 games, he threw 3 touchdowns in every single game. That's crazy. He had 15 touchdown passes in the first 5 games. He threw 2 touchdown passes the rest of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So it was 2 different seasons for him. So I guess if they're looking around, you get it.
I get it. And I don't really fault Pat Narduzzi for making his quarterback room as competitive as possible either, right? It's not like Eli Holstein was awesome all year and of course he's your guy and like, oh, this is weird, you're bringing in someone else. It's like he was bad the second half of the season. So
yeah.
I think you know what you have with him. Well, I shouldn't say that. Not that he's necessarily a finished product, but like you kind of know what the baseline is. You want to see if Eli Holstein can get better, but you also want to protect yourself in case he doesn't.
Right.
That's not unreasonable. I certainly didn't have Pitt on my radar for teams that were going to be going after transfers in the middle of the season.
If Pitt opens the season next year with Eli Holstein as the starting quarterback, how will you feel?
Okay, pretty good.
Yeah, I'll feel good.
Yeah.
I'll feel good and hope that he can stay healthy and that he'll grow as a second-year starting quarterback in year 2 in Cade Bell's system, and that he has a chance to let it rip. So I'll feel good about it, but I also get what you're talking about. Cincinnati, Brendan Sorsby announced that he'll be back. They also got Dante Corleone back, which was huge for Cincinnati. He announced that he is staying, a great defensive tackle. But this was one of those where like Sorsby put it out on social media. It's not just like an assumption. It's like, he's like, I'm not going anywhere. And again, this was another one of those where Cincinnati started off 5-2 and then lost their last 5 games. And he had a couple loose games in there, but I like him, Bill. And I think that if Brendan Sorsby is the starting quarterback for Cincinnati in 2025, then they're good to go.
I like Sorsby too. I liked him when they got him. I thought he had a little something to him when he was at Indiana in a bad situation. And I thought we saw enough of that this season at Cincinnati for that to still be promising. So I'm glad he's back.
Bad game against West Virginia, not great against Iowa State, but like had some other really spectacular games this year. Threw for 426 and 4 touchdowns against Texas Tech. Like this guy can move too. I think there's a lot there. And again, he was one of the successful transfers this year after coming from Indiana. Illinois
is also a little complicated, I think. So Luke Altmaier, I thought made a really nice jump this year. In his second year at Illinois at the transfer from Ole Miss, as you said. He has one more year left. I've read speculation that teams might come after him, that maybe some like the SEC might be interested in Luke Altmaier again. There's the chance that he could turn pro. None of that has been settled as we're having this conversation. The other part of that is Illinois also has Donovan Leary, who I know coming out of the spring you were very high on. And I think there's a belief in Champaign that he would be ready to start if given the opportunity. If Luke Altmaier comes back, then you're asking Donovan Leary to be a backup for a 4th year and then have 1 year left to play. So I guess some assessment has to be done between those two, kind of like which one would you rather have, which maybe sounds silly given how good Luke Altmaier was this year and the fact that Donovan Leary, while he's been around for a long time, actually hasn't played that much. The other part, too, is like Pat Bryant and Zachary Franklin. The top 2 receivers aren't going to be back next year. Pat Bryant's already opted out of the bowl game. Zachary Franklin is just out of eligibility. So might it just make sense for like Luke Altmaier to kind of move on and try to go pro or like help Illinois like through an offensive reset? I'm not sure. So it's not like Illinois is hurting for options. I don't know which road they're going to go down.
But they don't seem like oh my gosh, you got to go in the portal either way, because if plan A is either Altmaier or Leary, they should be okay with that.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to go in the portal. I think if Altmaier decides to leave or turn pro, they'll go to Leary. And if Altmaier decides to stay, maybe they'll lose Leary, but they'll still have Altmaier.
Okay. Pretty good spot. Brett Bielema kind of doing his thing. And I think Brett Bielema has shown that he knows how to work the portal.
Yeah.
From J.C. Davis to Zachary Franklin, like other guys, like they've done a pretty good job in there.
Yeah.
Okay. BYU, Jake Retzloff has 1 year left. Let's let it rip.
Yeah.
Like, go do your thing, Jake Retzloff. Go be a hero. Like, this is great. Like, the idea of where BYU is going to be going into 2025 compared to where they were going into 2024, where Jake Retzloff and Gary Bohannon were battling it out. I guess the people around BYU thought it would be Retzloff, but like the way he played, there's just like, he's the guy, and I would hope that he's not going anywhere. So you feel good about this? We're okay with this?
I feel great about it. I also love the NIL deal that Jake Retzloff got with Manischewitz.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
NIL deal, which also was actually like that's actually part of this too. Like, that's a new NIL deal that is like, he's not going anywhere. Right. Yeah. So I don't know anything about this, but Isaac Wilson is transferring from Utah and his brother, Zach Wilson, played at BYU. I don't know.
I don't know anything about it either. That just feels like a pretty straight line. No, like,
okay.
Just Isaac Wilson, you had to play too early. Why don't you come home to Provo? We'll let you incubate for a little bit. Back up Jake Retzloff, and then you're the guy. As a
that sounds good to you or not good to you?
That would sound great to me.
Okay, that sounds great to me too. All right, let's make that happen.
Yeah, because I bet Zach Wilson's brother, might have some nice NIL opportunities in Provo too.
Yeah. Okay, we'll do that. So then these are the last 2 for me that I have in this category, but I'm not as sure about. So one is Maryland and Billy Edwards Jr.
Mm-hmm.
They brought in MJ Morris last year from NC State. I kind of was thinking, well, if they're bringing MJ Morris, they're bringing him in. He had started 5 games in North Carolina State, bringing him in to start. Billy Edwards won the job. and played pretty well at times, and maybe toward the end of the year was leaking a little bit. They did play MJ Morris a little bit at the end of the year. Billy Edwards has eligibility. It seems like there is, at least I've read some things on Maryland message boards or whatever of like, would Billy Edwards be a quarterback that maybe some other schools would come after? But I think if that happened, maybe that just is MJ Morris time at Maryland. So I put it here in the returning starters because Billy Edwards was the starter and could stay, but I don't know that it's 100% locked in.
I don't know that it's locked in either. It just feels highly unlikely to me that if you roll with Billy Edwards again, that you're going to keep MJ Morris, right?
Agree.
So Mike Loxley has to make a call there on which one he'd rather have.
Yeah. So, and I do think, but I don't think that they are going to have to be in the portal themselves, because I think either of those two options, it's a little bit like Altmaier and Leary, right? If you keep the starter, do you lose the backup? But either way, you probably won't have both, but you almost certainly should have one. And we think either of them would be good enough to be your plan for 2025. You would apply that to Maryland the same way we would apply it to Illinois?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So then the last one is Drew Aller going pro? And I don't think we know that for Penn State. We have to see how he plays in the playoff. But he can come back. Obviously, they would love for him to be back. I would imagine they will put together a healthy NIL package to try to keep him. But if he decides to go pro because he tears it up in the playoff, is going to be a first-round pick, then I would guess that some combination of Bo Perbula and Ethan Grunkmeyer, who was their highly rated quarterback recruit this year, would be enough that I don't think it would lead Penn State into the portal. But this is one of those. The only reason Penn State wouldn't have their starter back is because he's so good he goes to the NFL.
Yeah, I don't think they go to the portal. Bo Perbula maybe, but James Franklin, when he's been asked about Ethan Grunkmeyer this year, has been pretty effusive with his praise of how he's developed. So I definitely agree that Drew Aller could play his way to kind of not having any other choice but to go to the NFL after this playoff. But it's still very much up in the air. We were talking to some Penn State people out in Indianapolis, and they seem to think that it hasn't yet been decided either way.
Okay. So, I mean, this is one of those, this is like good problems to have. Our quarterback's so good he left, but also we're kind of prepared behind him. I think Penn State, this has been the final piece for Penn State. This is what everyone's been waiting for Penn State's level of quarterback play, both in recruiting, but more importantly, play on the field. Trace McSorley was great, but Trace McSorley wasn't an NFL quarterback. If Penn State has an NFL quarterback, what do they look like? They look like this.
Yeah.
So this worked. And if they keep Drew Aller for 2025, like, let's see what that looks like.
Yep.
Other important guys would be gone, but that would be really interesting. Talking about who would bring back one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Penn State and Drew Aller would be on that list if he stays.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right.
For sure.
Quick break. When we come back, guys on rosters who weren't the starter this year but seem primed to take the job in 2025, and then the teams that got to go in the portal. All that next on Kings of the North. Doug and Bill back on Kings of the North. Quarterback plans, Notre Dame. You did Notre Dame and you put them here, and I was hoping you would put them here. But why do you believe that Notre Dame's quarterback, with Riley Leonard being out of eligibility, is currently on their roster?
I'm going to read from the book of Marcus Freeman here. Quote, "We have no plans of going into the transfer portal for a quarterback." End quote.
Okay. Look at you.
It's going to be, it's going to be CJ Carr.
Let's go.
Steve Angeli is the current QB2. He has another year left. I think we had another 2 years left. So he could come back and compete. I think he will come back and compete for the job. I also have Kenny Minchie, who's a year ahead of CJ Carr, but I think this is all lining up for CJ Carr to take over as Notre Dame starter. I think CJ Carr maybe by this point would have been QB2. He hurt his elbow. He's played in one game and he's been like nursing an elbow injury all year. So we haven't seen a lot of him. We saw him in the spring game. Got pretty excited by what we saw.
Got very excited.
He's got the goods, I think. So I think he's the next guy.
So, and this is what we're talking about. This is an example of Notre Dame's got to get off the carousel. Sam Hartman, Riley Leonard, we got why they did it, but they're too good for that to be their plan.
Yes.
But for this to be the plan, we got Riley Leonard, we got CJ Carr in recruiting. Like, this is chef's kiss. This is how it should look.
This is what it looks like. Yeah.
Okay. We're excited. We're going to talk about CJ Carr a lot on this show in the next 8 months. Okay. West Virginia. Now, as we are recording this, they don't have a coach. By the time you hear it, they might. But I do think there's a vibe around West Virginia that keeping Nico Marchiol is very important. And I think he's been good enough as a guy who has played, has started. I think he started 4 or 5 games at West Virginia when Garrett Green was hurt, that he's the future. I don't know that there's anybody who's been watching West Virginia. I don't think anybody in the fan base really questions that. It's just a matter of when you bring in a new coach and everything's off the table, who knows what could happen. But I think it's the reasonable assumption now that Nico Marchiol will be West Virginia's starting quarterback in 2025. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think the only thing that would push me off of that is if whoever the new head coach is has someone in his pocket to bring with him. Yeah. But I don't know that would be the case. So, yeah, like Nico Marchiol's entire existence at West Virginia thus far has been fans like on the edge of their seat, just hoping West Virginia could keep him for when his time came. And now it's here. So I would imagine that he will be the guy. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's got to get better. I mean, remember that Cincinnati, I've talked about this game a million times, that Cincinnati West Virginia game when Cincinnati outplayed West Virginia, but West Virginia won, and Nico Marchiol made like 2 throws and they won the game. But afterward, Neil Brown was like, the quarterback play was not good enough. So, but also he's young, and I think, but there's a lot there. So this seems like a good plan. Nico Marchiol in 2025. Oregon, talk it out. I'm intrigued. This is, by the way, this is a gigantic decision and discussion. Who will replace the school that has perhaps worked the quarterback portal as well as anybody in the country to get 2 years of Bo Nix and 1 year of Dylan Gabriel? Who's next?
I mean, it's got to be Dante Moore, right? I guess I will never be so foolish as to assume that Oregon won't be active somewhere in the transfer portal. But it seems a little unlikely at quarterback after what they did last offseason. By bringing in Dylan Gabriel and then bringing in Dante Moore right behind him. Dante Moore, former 5-star prospect in the class of 2023, started far too early at UCLA, wasn't very good, came to Oregon for a reset. They preserved his red shirt this year, like intentionally. They didn't play him toward the end of the year. They played Austin Novosad instead, who's also a pretty highly regarded prospect, was a 4-star prospect in that same 2023 class. So you have 2 guys there from the same recruiting class, and Dante Moore and Austin Novosad, who they're both on the roster currently as we're having this conversation. I think maybe those 2 battle it out in the spring, and I would assume that Dante Moore wins that. And then they signed 2 guys in this recruiting class, Achilles Smith Jr. and I practice this, Jaron Kiave Sangapulatele, who was a Cal commit that they flipped late, who's pretty freaking good.
5-star, right?
Some places, yeah. I mostly just wanted to show that I practice saying his name because it's fun to say. It's fun to say. It's melodic. I would just be very surprised if it's not Dante Moore. Like I have a lot of guys probably want to go play for Oregon. So if someone comes knocking on their door and says, perhaps even like, hey, I'll take a little less money or whatever to come play for you guys because you guys are good, then maybe Oregon gets something they can't necessarily turn down. But I haven't seen anything linking Oregon to transfer quarterbacks. I think they had a plan starting from last offseason, and that plan is Dante Moore being the starter next year.
Yeah. Dante Moore, who is like homegrown and a transfer. He was committed to Oregon, flipped to UCLA, played at UCLA, transferred back to Oregon. So this is son of the North, Detroit native. So like this is great. Let's go and see what Dante Moore can do. And again, do you think Oregon should get off the quarterback carousel, or if they are presented with a Dylan Gabriel type, is it okay? Like they can win a lot of NIL battles. Would you take it? And if it blows up your room, so be it. You'll just go get another portal guy when you need him.
I mean, I would like for them to get off of this, but and it seems like they're trying to, right? Like you're going to get probably 2 years of Dante Moore. I guess it could just be one, but I would guess you're going to get 2, and then you have 2 freshmen that you just signed kind of lined up to be the future. So it seems like they would like to get off the transfer thing. So and I think that's probably the right course of action.
Yeah. Just like Notre Dame. They're probably too good to be relying on it. So Washington, we're fired up for the backup who's ready to go.
Yeah, Damon Williams, who is like kind of already the starter. It's not even like he started against Oregon. He's going to start the bowl game. Will Rogers is still there, and Jed Fish continues to say very nice things about Will Rogers, but Will Rogers is out of eligibility after this year. He's like being described as the guy who's helping kind of coach Damon Williams to be the starter of the future for Washington. Freshman this year will be a true sophomore next year. Followed Jed Fish from Arizona. Like this is his team now.
Yeah. This worked out. Like Washington lost their quarterback futures, and the one guy followed Kalen DeBoer to Alabama, but then Damon Williams followed Jed Fish to Washington, and he's going to be fun. Yeah, like this guy has a high level skill set.
He's got some juice.
Washington has some stuff to figure out, especially on the offensive line. But there's enough pieces there. I thought they had such a weird year. I thought the things they did well, and the things they didn't do well killed them. So if they can keep the things they do well, I think they have a chance to make a leap next year.
Yeah, I guess maybe they'll have to find a new defensive coordinator.
Oh, yeah. Dad. All right. The next one up is, who is it? I lost my list.
The Gophers.
Oh, let's go to the Gophers, which is the team that I was thinking about when it's like the perfect execution of 1 year portal guy as you prepare your recruit.
They have prepared. Well, yes, you're right. So Max Brosmer was a one year bridge, I guess, from New Hampshire. And I think Minnesota probably got most of what they were hoping to get out of that. Yep. The thing that I found odd is there were 772 available quarterback snaps for Minnesota this year. And Max Brosmer played 750 of them.
Wow.
Drake Lindsay, who is the guy that is allowing us to put Minnesota in this category, was a 3-star prospect in the 2024 class. He was the Arkansas Gatorade Player of the Year, prolific high school passer, played 17 snaps and threw 4 passes this year. I would have thought that maybe Minnesota would have liked to get him a little more ready.
I don't know.
For the following
Coaches
year.
do this.
Yeah, but it does seem like they're very much willing and planning on handing it over to Drake Lindsay next year.
Yeah. And again, 2 years ago, when everybody in the Big Ten West was starting a transfer quarterback except Minnesota, because they were playing homegrown Ethan Kaliak-Manis, and then he was like, I'm going to Rutgers. Or they just said, I don't know about you. And then it was like, oh, now Minnesota. Now they're back to this. I think PJ Fleck, this is what he wants to do. And they had the 1 year bridge with Max Brosmer. Now, the thing I'm curious about is I think the Max Brosmer thing worked pretty darn well. It really makes me wish that Max Brosmer would have been a 2 year guy instead of a 1 year guy. Because Max Brosmer at Minnesota, year 2 in the system, I would be all in for.
Yes.
But there's a part of me that makes me wonder if PJ Fleck was like, wow, bringing in like a 4 year starter who knows what he's doing and giving him some freedom to like run the offense at the line. That's pretty attractive, the ready-made quarterback. And so I don't know who it would be, what FCS guy or group of 5 guy PJ Fleck would have his eye on, but I really thought the Brosmer thing went so well. I just wonder if he's intrigued. But I'm fired up for Drake Lindsay.
There are some FCS guys. We didn't mention this with Pitt, and because I haven't seen him linked with Pitt, but Western Carolina's quarterback, who played under Cade Bell, now the Pitt OC there, went into the portal, I think on Tuesday or Wednesday. So that's an FCS guy. I think there's a couple other FCS guys. So I don't think it'd be unreasonable if Minnesota wanted to do one more bridge year to Drake Lindsay, considering how little Drake Lindsay played this year. But they haven't been linked to anybody as of yet.
Then because it's right, it's all about choices. What are you willing to lose if you do something? But I don't know that, right, would Drake Lindsay in year 2 be at the start me or lose me stage? Mm-hmm. You know, we don't want to speak for guys, but I don't think that would be 1,000% the point where they would be at, right?
No,
So,
and I also think we've mentioned a couple of guys Minnesota has been able to keep for next year. Like they NIL wise seem to do a pretty good job of at least keeping their own players. So if they had to do that for Drake Lindsay, I think they could.
Yeah. Okay. So the last one in this category is I saved it for last. It's pretty kind of a big deal. And it's who's going to be Ohio State's quarterback next year, Bill Landis. And they are in the same spot as you mentioned with Drake Lindsay, because a lot of people, I think us included, have been operating under the assumption that it is going to be Julian Sayin, who was the number one recruit by some measures in the class of 2024, committed to Alabama, went there for bowl practice, right? And then flipped to Ohio State, left after Nick Saban retired and came to Ohio State. But to your point, snaps this season, Will Howard, 673 for Ohio State. Devin Brown, the backup this year for the Buckeyes, who has already announced he's going in the portal, 63 snaps. And Julian Sayin, 24 snaps. And Julian Sayin threw like 4 passes or something, through 13 passes, I guess. So is there any reason to think Julian Sayin is not going to be Ohio State's starting quarterback in his second year of college as the number one quarterback in his class?
No, I don't think so. And Ryan Day has done this. Ryan Day turned it over to CJ Stroud with almost no experience, that had not thrown a pass. Turned it over to the Kyle McCord with very limited experience. Kyle McCord had to start a game as a freshman because CJ Stroud was hurt, but aside from that, didn't play a ton. So this will just be kind of par for the course of Ryan Day to turn it over to a quarterback who doesn't have a ton of experience. He has to be the starter, I think, because I don't know that Ohio State did a great job developing Kyle McCord. I don't know that Ohio State did a great job developing Devin Brown. It remains to be seen, I guess, if Ohio State had done a great job developing Lincoln Kienholz, who's also still in the quarterback room. They can't miss again. And if you don't start Julian Sayin, I think that is on some level an admission that he's not ready, right? And if he's not ready, then what's up?
So they also have Air Noland, who was one of the top 5 quarterbacks in that class. He committed to Ohio State, had more of a straight line, but they wound up, I think by the 24/7 composite, they have the number 1 and number 4 quarterbacks in the class of 2024.
Yeah,
who would be ready to fight it out here. So, like, I think the assumption from the way just things have gone from watching practice and that kind of thing is that Sayin is ahead of Noland. But
Sayin has played and Nolan didn't, and Nolan never dressed never traveled for road games, and Sayin did.
But so Will Howard's going to be gone and Devin Brown's going to transfer. We don't know what's going to happen with Lincoln Kienholz. They also could be in the market for a veteran who's willing to come in and be a backup, so that they don't have three guys in your room who have never really played. Like Lincoln Kienholz played in the bowl last year, but also he could go in the portal. So they've got to supplement with a veteran who's willing to come in without an expectation. So, but they're not going to be in the portal for a starter. If they're in the portal for a starter, our eyebrows are super raised.
Yes, I don't think they will be, but yes, if that were the case, the eyebrows would definitely be raised.
Yeah. So let's throw it out there. The only other thing would be like, there is a guy who's playing college football right now who did come to Ohio State for a year and has since established himself as a starting quarterback and probably is not in a situation to be the starter at his school next year. And if he doesn't go to the NFL and he does go in the portal, would Ohio State look at Quinn Ewers?
It's a fascinating question. You're not the first one to ask it. Maybe. I don't know.
Like, to our point, this whole discussion, if they bring in Quinn Ewers, is that just like, hey, it's a playoff quarterback. He's good. Maybe he's not a first-round pick, but he's good. We have a pre-existing relationship. We'll just let our young guys develop a year more. Like, is there any downside to that? Or will our eyebrows still be raised of like, why is it not Julian Sayin in year 2 when that should have been a reasonable plan?
I think my eyebrows would still be raised. Yeah, if that were to happen, because it's not like Quinn Ewers is like blowing everyone away with how he's played. Right? He's experienced, which matters. But Will Howard was experienced and didn't blow everyone away, and that's who Ohio State brought in to be the quarterback this year. So I don't know what the relationships are like at Ohio State. Quinn Ewers was not in Columbus very long. Like he got to Columbus in August and was gone by December. So, and the quarterback's coach who recruited him is no longer at Ohio State, Corey Dennis. So I don't even know if that would be a possibility. It is a near guarantee that Quinn Ewers will not be Texas's starting quarterback next year.
Right. You got to play.
A matter of, is he going to be in college or is he going to try to go to the NFL?
Yeah. So it's something to.
There are some other. There's some other teams we can talk about that maybe could use Quinn Ewers bridge quarterback.
All right. So let's go to our 8 schools then that we have as you got to get in the portal. And the first team that I put in the you got to get in the portal, I think they got to get in the portal, but I don't know that it means 100% that the portal quarterback's going to be the starter, because what is Michigan going to do with Bryce Underwood? Yep. They got the number 1 quarterback recruit in this class, but let me give you a little research.
Mm-hmm.
According to PFF, there were, I think, 10 true freshman quarterbacks who played threw at least 100 passes this year, I think was the threshold. Really had any kind of role at all. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And this is Power 4 and Group of 5. This is an FBS. 10 true freshmen. Okay. The only 2 true freshmen who started and were the plan to start from opening day and started basically the whole year were Dylan Raiola at Nebraska and Danny O'Neal at San Diego State. The other 8 true freshman quarterbacks who wound up playing were all number 2 guys who had to play because of injury, or DeMond Williams at Washington, who was the wrinkle quarterback the whole year and got some experience, kind of like J.J. McCarthy at Michigan, but never was the starter, okay?
Mm-hmm.
This is C.J. Bailey at NC State, who took over when Grayson McCall got hurt. This is Michael Van Buren at Mississippi State, who took over when Blake Shapen got hurt. This is Isaac Wilson at Utah, who took over when Cam Rising got hurt. This is Deshaun Pirtle at Charlotte, who took over when Max Brown got hurt. This is DJ Lagway at Florida, who took over and played great after Graham Mertz got hurt. This is Luke Kromenhoek, who was the number 3 quarterback at Florida State and took over after DJ Uiagalelei and Brock Glenn got hurt. And this is Michael Hawkins at Oklahoma, who took over after Jackson Arnold got benched.
Mm-hmm.
So there were only 2 true freshmen who were the plan. An Underwood starting would be the Raiola plan. But Michigan, I think, is a step above Nebraska. Are you willing to take lumps like Nebraska was willing, and I think should have been willing, to take lumps with Raiola this year? Would Michigan be willing to do that? And then the other part of it is this. 4 of those true freshmen who were forced to play early are in the portal.
Mm-hmm.
So getting a chance to play early unexpectedly is not necessarily cultivating a situation where you say, wow, these guys trusted me enough to play right away. These are my guys. It's like, you put me in to get killed, I'm out of here. So I understand fans who want to play young, highly ranked quarterbacks right away. But Michael Van Buren's leaving Mississippi State, Isaac Wilson's leaving Utah, Deshaun Pirtle's leaving Charlotte, and Luke Kromenhoek, who was the number 5 quarterback in that class, is in the portal, in part, I think, because he had to play. Now, also, their season went to crap. So, that's my research. Would you play Bryce Underwood? Would you plan to play Bryce Underwood, or plan to play Jaden Davis, who was their freshman this year, highly rated? Or would you go into the portal if you were Michigan looking for a starting quarterback because you want that guy for 1 year before you get to Underwood?
I want a 1-year bridge.
Okay.
And I say that meaning go get the 1-year bridge. And if Bryce Underwood beats him out, then that's whatever, that happened. But right. I don't think you can plan to play Bryce Underwood in as your starter in 2025. And I think some people maybe will bristle at that a little bit because of how much money it costs Michigan to get Bryce Underwood. The only other thing that I think it is comparable to is Nico Iamaleava at Tennessee, who was pretty expensive, and he didn't start as a true freshman.
No, he played in the bowl game. That was
in the bowl game, but Joe Milton started. Joe Milton, Michigan fans know how good Joe Milton is. I think you need a 1-year bridge, yes. And that is I find Quinn Ewers to be very interesting for Michigan.
Oh,
is available.
Now, Bryce Underwood, I think, has been quoted to paraphrase something about like he'd like to play and have a record-setting freshman year. But that's what a young, confident, highly skilled player says. You also, as Sharon Moore, a new offensive coordinator, Chip Lindsey, would help him understand that we believe in you, obviously, 1,000%. Look at your NIL check. But like, we're just going to do this. But if you're ready by game 4 or game 7 or game 12 against Ohio State, we'll play you. And by the way, you're definitely going to be the guy in 2026. So if they're in this group because we agree they have to go in the portal. Mm-hmm. And it might be, do you think it's going to be harder for them to thread this needle because somebody coming in knows Bryce Underwood is going to be there and maybe has the ability to beat that guy out in the middle of 2025?
Yeah, I think so, which is what would make someone like Quinn Ewers maybe unrealistic. Anyone who would think to themselves like, oh, I'll go to Michigan and improve my draft stock, and then 4 weeks later, Bryce Underwood is on the field and you're holding a clipboard. So,
right.
Yes, I think that could make it difficult. Money talks. You can probably still get somebody there to play who has some quality about them. And I'm totally fine with Michigan creating an environment where Bryce Underwood is competing for the starting job.
Yes.
I just think it's wrong to put yourself in a situation where the only pathway you have is to start a true freshman at quarterback.
Okay. Is the Colorado situation with Juju Lewis the exact same conversation?
No, I don't think so.
So what's different about you choosing to put Colorado in this situation of them needing to go get a portal quarterback when they have borderline 5-star Juju Lewis in this class?
Size.
Okay.
Like Juju's a little quarterback. Bryce Underwood is, baby Cam Newton. There's a physicality component to this. It's not Juju Lewis is a very good quarterback prospect. He's not the same quarterback prospect as Bryce Underwood. I'd imagine the price tag to get Juju Lewis to Colorado was not nearly what it was to get Bryce Underwood to Michigan. And also too, with the way that Colorado will be reworking its roster year over year, you just don't know what's going to be around the quarterback. And like, if you're wrong or you miss at receiver or you miss on the offensive line and Juju Lewis is just getting killed every week, like that is a bad situation for a young quarterback to be in. I think you need a steadier hand there to help you navigate that a little bit. Again, I guess it's a similar dynamic to like, well, is this kid just going to pass me at some point? You're going to have to navigate that, but I think Colorado absolutely needs to go get a bridge, and they're looking like the Caden Salter from Liberty is visiting Colorado. There might be a couple of other guys who pop up like going to Colorado. I don't think Deion's going to stand pat here. I think they're going to bring in a starter for 2025.
And that brings us to Syracuse, where Caden Salter is also potentially involved. Involved with Anthony Calandria from Virginia.
Connor Wegman too. I've seen Connor Wegman's name tossed around a little bit.
Linked to Syracuse, because we tossed that around because Connor Wegman was at Texas A&M with Elijah Robinson, who was coaching at Texas A&M and now is the defensive coordinator at at Syracuse. So there's at least some relationship there. And Kyle McCord led the nation in passing. And they're going to let a quarterback have a chance to thrive, which is fun, but also sets you up to have a chance to show the NFL what you can do. Connor Wegman, I think it feels like they should be able to get somebody good. Yes?
Yes. They were also linked with Darian Mensah from Tulane, but then he has since gone off the board. He's going to Duke, unfortunately. He's a fun player. I wish he was in the North. It's interesting, and maybe this falls under the category of sort of like saying what you're supposed to say. On signing day, they were talking to Syracuse GM Nate McNeil, and he didn't say like, yes, we're definitely going after a portal quarterback. He said like they'd weigh their options, but they're confident in the room. But the room right now is Michael Johnson, who was the QB2 this year, has one more year left to be a 6th-year guy. He's been at Penn State and FAU and Syracuse all that time in college football. He's played 11 games and he's thrown 3 passes. They signed Jakari Williams in 2024. He's a former Georgia Tech commit. He was committed to the previous Syracuse staff, but had stayed on with Fran Brown's staff. He didn't play this year. And they brought in 2 guys in the 2025 class, a 3-star kid from New York and a 3-star kid from Texas. I don't know that I see a 2025 starting quarterback there. So I think they're almost certainly going to go get somebody. And I guess the thing that I don't know, and I don't know that I've seen discussed, is is Kyle McCord leading the country in passing attempts and passing yards? Is that definitely what they want to be offensively? Or is that just leaning into what they had available to them in Fran Brown's first season? Because like you said, it'd be a pretty enticing situation if it's like, hey, come here, come sling it around. Our offensive coordinator has spent a lot of time in the NFL. It's not a bad spot, right? But I just don't like, is Syracuse now going to be like the new perennial passing leader in college football? I'm not, or in that conversation every year. I'm not entirely sure, but my strong hunch is that they're going to go get a portal guy, and I actually think maybe it'd be good if they could swing it, and the Connor Wegman would fall into this category, a portal guy that has more than 1 year of eligibility left.
Yeah, but to me, this is one of those schools. Especially if they continue to sling it around, Portal Central just be in the discussion to get one of the 5 best portal quarterbacks every year. You need one. And you're going to get a guy who's started, who's been developed, who wants an opportunity to show his skills, and then Fran Brown seems like a great guy to play for. Let's go.
Yeah, we'll see who else might pop up on their radar here. I know like Emmett Brown from San Jose State, which is another team that threw the ball a ton last year. He went into the portal. Fernando Mendoza from Cal went in the portal. I guess it'd be weird to transfer from one ACC school to another, but certainly possible. So Caden Salter has been mentioned. Connor Wegman has been mentioned. Anthony Calandria has been mentioned, but I bet others pop up too.
They're going to get somebody good.
Yeah,
I don't know. We have any doubt. They'll get somebody that people will be excited about. Utah, this might be done. They hired Jason Beck, the offensive coordinator from New Mexico, and you said it immediately, and it feels like this is where it's heading, that they just might be getting Devin Dampier, right, from New Mexico, because they have to get somebody. Cam Rising might come back for an 8th year. Whatever. He's been a great college player, but at some point, like, I think we're past the point of sensibility. Like, what are we doing here? And then
come back
everybody
wearing
else,
a headset. Let's come back wearing a headset. Yeah,
great. But so this is too logical of a fit, and it feels like it's going to happen. Everybody else in their room transferred, so they have to get somebody. But Devin Dampier, following his coordinator, basically is a slam dunk.
Electric football player, Devin Dampier. That'll be fun to watch. Yeah,
welcoming him to the North.
Yeah, definitely.
Welcome. All right. How about, do you want to use the word electric for Iowa's quarterback options here?
I don't know that I use the word electric, but I also think there's some clarity here.
Okay.
So currently, Iowa, as it prepares to play for a bowl game, has 2 quarterbacks available on its roster, and only one of them is a scholarship player, and Brendan Sullivan. The other is Jackson Stratton. I don't know which one's going to start the bowl game, but neither one of them is going to be the starting quarterback next year, so I guess it's a moot point. Kirk Ferentz said, "We would be fools to at least not see what's available in the transfer portal." I think they're going to get Hank Brown, the transfer from Auburn, who's visiting this week. There's already some predictions for him to flip to Iowa. He is originally from Illinois, and he played his high school ball in Tennessee. He was committed to Liberty, and then I think followed Hugh Freeze to Auburn. But he is from the same hometown as Tim Lester in Illinois.
Let's go.
Yeah,
get that.
And he's got 3 years of eligibility remaining. So Hank Brown had to play some this year. It didn't look very good at times for Auburn. But if Hank Brown can come to Iowa and be merely competent at the quarterback position, he gives them a real chance to stabilize that with a couple of years of eligibility.
Okay, I like it. I don't think there's a 0% chance Brendan Sullivan plays quarterback for Iowa next year. I don't know that it's 0, because I think he'll stay around, and I don't know that they're all the way out on him. But they need to get somebody, as you said, and as Ferentz said.
I don't know that they are either, but I would also, we mentioned Lincoln Kienholz when we were talking about Ohio State. Yeah, if he goes into the portal, like every Big Ten West team, I think, looking for a quarter. Like, Lincoln Kienholz is from South Dakota. Yeah. So I think Iowa fits that. I think potentially Minnesota, although that's a little less obvious, and Wisconsin, who we haven't talked about yet. I think could be a spot.
Indiana, what are they going to do? They're going to get a starter in the portal, right? But you also like Tyler Cherry. But
I do. Yeah.
As a recruit, it was a pretty big time recruit. He was a true freshman this year, right? So to just assume that, they also have Taven Jackson on the roster, but Kurt Cignetti has said this, and I think this is one of those. This will be a great test of Indiana. Can you turn success and an activated NIL program into the next step? Now, they did lose quarterbacks coach Tino Sunseri to UCLA, but they still got the OC. They still got Kurt Cignetti. You saw what Curtis Rourke did. This should be a very attractive landing spot. So I am anticipating Indiana hitting at least a double, legging it out into a triple in the portal here. I just don't know who it's going to be.
I don't know who it's going to be either, but so they've been incredibly successful with quarterbacks. I think their final 3 starting quarterbacks at JMU were Conference Player of the Year, and Curtis Rourke was second team All Big Ten this year with those guys. So I guess you don't have Tino Sinceri there to help you sell it, but Mike Shanahan's still there calling the plays, and it's still Kurt Cignetti's offense. And I think you can reasonably assume they're going to put good skill guys around you because they prioritize it. So I think it'll be pretty enticing. I have no idea who it's going to be either. But I'd imagine I would think that Tyler Cherry's probably not ready yet, but maybe you get another 1-year guy. Maybe you can hand it over to him. Yeah.
And so down the line, like, it'd be great to develop Tyler Cherry, but also if Indiana decides to be, we're good at this, we're well coached, we're always going to be active in the portal. I think Indiana could be the new landing spot for the island of misfit toys, which is not a slam, but which is like, were you an under-recruited player who went and balled out in the group of 5 or FCS and you want to make a leap? Come to Indiana. Were you at a blue blood who didn't appreciate your skills? Come to Indiana. We're going to coach the heck out of you and give you an opportunity. And we're a bunch of guys with chips on our shoulder, and that's our identity. I like that.
Yeah.
So Deion Sanders, again, there's been some criticism of like, hey, if you're not doing enough high school recruiting, can you live in the portal? It's a 1-year thing. It's obviously Deion's second year, but like what Colorado and Indiana did this year is an example of how you can live in the portal. Now, is it definitely replicable? I guess my point would be, I'm not sure it's not replicable. I think maybe we were all at a point before of like, okay, you can do that for 1 year, but you really need to do high school recruiting. I don't know. If you can establish an identity, as I just outlined, I think Colorado and Indiana maybe could be the 2 best positioned schools in the country to own the portal every year. I don't know. Does that sound crazy to you?
Doesn't sound crazy to me. No, they just need the consistent financial investment from their universities to do it. But it seems like right now both have it.
Yeah, and good head coaches that people want to come play for. Let's roll.
Yeah.
All right, staying in state, Purdue. Marcos Davila, I really liked him in the spring too. He's in the portal. So every player on Purdue is in the portal. This is just how it works. We like to hire with Barry Odom. I have no idea what they're doing here though, but it's got to be a portal guy, right?
He's got to build a whole room. Yeah, like it's not just fun to I guess so. Ryan Brown and Marcus Davila both transferred and said like we'll wait and see what's up with the staff, but they currently, as we're having this conversation, have not made an offensive coordinator hire. I did look. Haj Malik Williams, who was the UNLV quarterback this past season and played very well, I think might be able to apply for a medical year if he wanted to. Okay. He is currently in his 6th year, so next year would be his 7th year in college. But he was limited to only 4 games in 2021, and that was after he had already used his redshirt. He got hurt in 2021 at Campbell and only played 4 games. So I wondered if he might be able to get a medical hardship out of that if he wanted to, and if he wanted to go to Purdue. That's not me reporting anything. That's just we wondered whether or not he could be an option, and maybe he could be. But Barry Odom was going to need to go get 3 quarterbacks. I think they signed one in this class in 2025. There's another guy currently on the roster who transferred in a couple of years ago, but you need at least 2 more, and you need a starter. So I don't know how enticing that situation is going to be until we see who the OC is and what they're able to bring in around that quarterback portal wise too.
Yeah. Okay. So then the last team on the list is Wisconsin, and both Tyler Van Dyke and Braden Locke are in the transfer portal heading out. Mabry Matoyer is the young guy there, but you put them on the need to get in the portal list rather than just handing it to Mabry Matoyer as a second-year guy who's played very little, and that seems reasonable to me.
I think it's too important of a season for Luke Fickell to do that.
Yep.
Right. I think they need to go get an experienced guy, which would be the 4th straight year of them having a different opening day starter at quarterback, which is not great because it's not like they're turning those guys out to the NFL. But yeah, Tyler Van Dyke and Braden Locke aren't an option. The only guy currently on the roster that would be is Mabry Matoyer. They have a couple of freshmen, including Carter Smith, who was a good flip for them. They also have Braden Locke's brother, who they signed in the 2025 recruiting class. So I don't know if they're going to keep him or not. I don't know who this is going to be either. They have their OC, right? They got Jeff Grimes. but I don't know what kind of quarterback they're going to be able to attract there.
Not to put too fine a point on it, but I think they might need a portal savior here that we just talked about. The North went like 11.5 for 15. Tanner Mordecai in year one of Luke Fickell, I thought was a good get from SMU, and like, okay, here we go. And it kind of just was okay. And then Tyler Van Dyke, I thought made a lot of sense coming from Miami, and he got hurt. Mordecai got hurt too. Braden Locke wound up playing each of the last 2 years as a backup when that was not anybody's plan. So they just need to stay healthy at quarterback, but they're not going to get Dylan Gabriel, but Curtis Rourke, a Curtis Rourke type would be a miracle for Wisconsin.
Yes.
Now, it's not only about the quarterback. It's like, why did Curtis Rourke succeed at Indiana? Because they put him in positions to succeed. Were Phil Longo and Luke Fickell putting their quarterback transfers in positions to succeed at Wisconsin? I don't know. They also had health issues, but they could really use Fernando Mendoza or somebody like that coming in and being like, I got this. Let's go.
Yeah, they need to swing big. They need to be financially aggressive to go like get a real one. Not a well, we hope this can be the guy kind of situations. Like, you need to go get a dude.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's it. I actually think like pretty good shape for the North. Like I'm glad we did this exercise, but again, with like half the teams being like, you're returning your guy, and another 6 being like, you're doing a good job grooming. It's not, we're not in desperation mode as a region right now at quarterback.
No, only I think honestly, Wisconsin and Purdue and Iowa are probably the only teams that feel a little desperate at the moment. And even Iowa's got some clarity on who their guy might be. So yeah.
And the rest of it is like opportunity mode. Right? Hey, we're a good program. We have some resources. We'd be a great landing spot for a bunch of these pretty good quarterbacks in the portal. So, but it also really, really matters. All right. When we come back, we'll wrap things up here on Kings of the North. Back on KOTN. That was long. I thought it was good, though. I hope you guys enjoyed that. We like it when we can do the comprehensive things where we hit on all 28 of our Northern teams. It's obviously playoff season, but we want to make sure we're covering all 28 of our teams, and I think that was worth it. There's so much stuff happening in the portal with guys are visiting, and we're going to do a lot of it here on when a guy actually moves. So that's the most important stuff. I think you can lose yourself a little bit in trying to track every maybe this will going to happen, but can I do one? Because On3 is predicting that Williams Nwaneri, who was a defensive player who was one of the top 10 players in the class last year and went to Missouri and played like 40 snaps at Missouri this year. Let me look. 38 snaps as an edge guy at Missouri this year. Basically didn't play. They're predicting that he is going to wind up at Nebraska. So for Nebraska to bring in a second-year guy who was a 5-star defensive player out of high school would be a huge deal. So we'll acknowledge that. But the rest of the stuff, Barry Odom's kid, I think as a high school guy, I think it was committed to UNLV, just signed with Purdue. So like, that's a nice thing. He's a quarterback. Maybe that'll be a thing. But most of this stuff, we'll talk about it after it happens, when guys leave the North, when guys come to the North, when things really matter. Obviously, we'll talk about it all in the offseason. And I do want to reset. I think we all need the context of how much did it matter so we can understand how much might it matter. So this offseason, I will promise that we will do what I like, which is looking at the 30 guys who played the most snaps. How did you get them? And again, for instance, we've done that with Indiana and Colorado already this year, and Deion Sanders and Kurt Cignetti. More than half the guys who matter for those two teams are portal guys, new portal guys in the offseason. So can you build a team, bring in half of a good team in the offseason? Those guys could. Those guys did. So could Purdue do that? Could West Virginia do that? Could Wisconsin, if they really wanted to hit it hard and have a hard reset, do that? I think we have some proof that you can if you do it the right way. So we'll continue to monitor that. Next week, previews of the playoffs. It'll be mostly Bill and I doing that. We'll have a couple people stop by as we usually do. I don't know that we have time. I'd love to get some of these bowl coaches on. I'd love to get PJ Fleck on the show. I honestly don't know if we have time with what we want to do and need to do to preview 6 Northern teams in the college football playoff. So I think we'll focus on the playoff. But for now, we wanted to hit that portal stuff. Thanks to you guys for being part of it. Poolpartygaming.com. Come join our bowl pick'em and bracket contest. We're going to have a good time there. We'll talk about it. All you need is your email. It's not costing you any money, and we'll figure out some prizes. And you can see how much smarter you are than me, Bill, producer Mike, and TShoe. For now, thanks as always to our producer, Mike Yarostowski, for making us look good and sound good. Thanks to you guys for being here. Thanks as always to Landis. He is the man. And we will see you guys on Monday. For now, I'm Doug Lesmerises, and that was Kings of the North.